As Americans, we live under the paradox of prosperity. The more prosperous we become, the more susceptible we are to abandoning the very values, principles, and conduct that made us prosperous in the first place. With our economy, education, and lifestyle on the line, we must find a way to rescue America from itself.
No nation can be great when its people are infested with an attitude of entitlement, when its adults leave their stations as guides to the young, and where its government is constituted by leaders who abandon its principles of individualism and personal responsibility. The youth of America are a good way to illustrate the problem of entitlement in society. I sat down with local mother Jennifer White to discuss this. Mrs. White, what do you think the most difficult part about raising kids is?
Most likely their general feelings of entitlement, the sense that they deserve things without having worked for it. Some of the problem is the fact that they are young, but another is the culture.
What do you mean by culture?
Well, ever since the 1960s, there's been this sentiment of basically turning away from the greatest generation. I don't want my kids to experience the hard life that I did while I was growing up, and I want to help them as much as possible.
They will one day face adversity. What will you do then?
What I've always done, walk with them through it. Where's Catherine? Catherine, get up right now. What are you doing?
I'm just rolling around.
Get up.
They will grow up eventually, though. Do you think they will be as prepared for the world as you were, even though they weren't allowed to experience failure?
Well, I'm not sure about that question, but I think I'm raising my kids reasonably well. I want them to be their own person and have self-esteem. I'm not babying them. I'm protecting them from the pains of failure. And entitlement is a problem in adults today as well. Just look at the debt crisis. It wiped $5 trillion from the wealth of Americans and has devolved into finger-pointing among agencies, political parties, and bankers. No one takes responsibility. Entitlement really hurts the United States.
Thank you, Jennifer.
The paradox of prosperity presents us with a theory on how a prosperous nation may, without even noticing, slip into decline. Here to help us understand debt in America is Alan Kruger, Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. Thank you for being with us today, Alan.
Good to be here.
When it comes to debt, what is the most difficult part about it?
Clearly, it's the unfathomable debt that is hard to grasp. Numbers like 100 billion, 4 trillion get tossed around, and no one can fathom the immense amount of money in circulation. Government talks about billions of dollars as if it is an insignificant sum. These are numbers that determine American financial prospects.
Is there anything that the American public doesn't realize when it comes to debt?
Yes. The amount of interest payments on the current debt in 2010 was $414 billion. With the amount of interest climbing, we may never be able to pay off all the debt at all.
What can the United States do to fix the debt?
America must become a net producer and exporter rather than just an importer and consumer. It also needs to be more cautious about where it places its money and to whom it makes business deals, like China.
Thank you, Alan. The American education system is in a crisis, and without the ability to get our debt under control, we have fewer resources to support education reform. I have the opportunity to sit down with the Board of Education representative, Shirley Huffstedler, and discuss with her the impacts of debt and entitlement. Welcome, Shirley. In your opinion, how does debt influence education?
Well, within the last few years, there have been record dropout rates, falling national test scores, and money being thrown at failing schools. Now with the debt limiting the amount of money education can receive, we are in even deeper trouble. Throwing money into schools is no longer an option, and it was never a solution. If we cannot restore integrity to the school systems, they will ultimately fail. Throwing money at the problem cannot restore integrity. It can only be restored through training of teachers.
So why is the dropout rate so important?
Well, each year, dropouts represent $320 billion lost in lifetime earning potential. They are considered a net loss to society. This means that they contribute less to society than their potential contribution, as well as usually contribute less than the cost of their violence, crimes, and hostility that they typically inflict.
How does the entitlement fit into all of this?
Well, let me ask you a question. How can we expect to change entitlement, spending, and gain a global economic competitive advantage when nearly one-third of our nation's youth drop out of school? Then they are forced to resort to crime to finance their lifestyles, or are unable to make enough money to avoid resorting to welfare. Our education is tied in so tightly with entitlement that they are nearly the same problem. We need to stop having low standards and change what is around us.
In conclusion, Salamone expressed three main issues with the country in his book Rescue America, namely entitlement, education, and debt. Only with careful planning and precise action can they be resolved and truly rescue America.